biomedicine as economic driver.
In July 2003, the Nomuyon administration selected biomedicine as one of the country's 10 new growth engines. The Korea Health Industry Promotion Act enacted in 1999 that was aimed to foster and develop the health industry, enhance its international competitiveness, and contribute to the improvements of people's health. As such, the Korean healthcare market expanded rapidly in the 2000s, and healthcare was recognized as the major pillar of the national economy. The increasing use of healthcare and expansion of the market led to the growth of related industries. In 2015, the domestic healthcare industry has a market size of 33.5 trillion won and a domestic output value of 30.7 trillion. As the Korean economy entered the era of post-catch-up with a sense of urgency to move away from traditional semiconductor shipbuilding and automotive industry in 21st century, biomedicine was recognized as a high-tech industry and an untapped market with high added value. At the same time, the Korean pharmaceutical industry was mainly focused on development and production of generic drugs, rather than development of novel drugs. So it lacked know-how, workforces, and facilities necessary to develop new drugs. The Korean government has been aiming to advance the healthcare industry since 2005. Establishing the Healthcare Industry Advancements Committee and creating medical complexes around the country. With policy support for the growth of the healthcare industry, Korea has become a world leader in clinical trials. In 2022, Korea was home to the fifth most clinical trials in the world with 711 trials. And Seoul was consistently recorded as a city with the most clinical trials in the world from 2019 to 2022. This is due to the steep rise in drug development costs since 2000s. Clinical trials have become a large part of the cost of developing new drugs. Multinational pharmaceutical companies have favored Korea because of its relatively low cost of conducting them, while quality of healthcare in Korea is comparable to those of US, Japan, and other European countries, which means that reliable data can be obtained. Yet, the cost of recruiting subjects and conducting the study is relatively low. At the same time, there is criticism of whether it is appropriate to outsource clinical trials, the most risk stage of drug development, to people of countries like South Korea, while benefits go to the Western societies. When biomedicine was identified as a new growth engine in 2003, it was not only because of their high added value, but also their potential as a major cash generator, with a potential to export more than $10 billion a year in the next 5 to 10 years, or to generate an equivalent production-induced effect. This increasing pressure for healthcare to be seen as part of industry and to generate direct economic impact combined with nationalism was exemplified by the Hwang Woo-seok case.
Hwang Woo-seok case.
On February 4, 2004, a research team led by Hwang Woo-seok of Seoul National University College of Veterinary Medicine announced in scientific journal Science that they had succeeded in establishing the world's first cloned embryonic stem cells using somatic cell nuclear transfer. Stem cells cloned from somatic cells that are average cell in the body can theoretically differentiate into any organ. And because they are derived from patients' own cells, they are not subject to cause any immune rejections. Hence, it was expected to mark a new era in personalized regenerative medicine. This was the world's first success story, especially as the government has designated biomedicine as a major industrial sector of new growth engine. And it drew not only the full support of the government, but also support and response of society at large. Hwang became a national hero instantly. Just a year later, on May 19, 2005, the team published a paper in Science on their success in establishing patient-specific embryonic stem cells. In the 2004 paper, the team has succeeded in establishing one stem cell line using 242 eggs. But in 2005, the success rate was dramatically improved with the team using 185 eggs to differentiate into 11 patient-specific stem cells. At this rate of technological progress, the application of cloned stem cells to regenerative medicine could become a reality in near future, leading to optimistic prediction that it could generate an economic impact of up to 33 trillion won in 10 years. But when the findings of Hwang's team were made public, they were immediately met with a number of questions. Not the least of which was where the 420 eggs used between 2004 and 2005 came from. While differentiation stem cells itself was technically challenging, donated eggs were essential for nuclear replacement. Eggs used in this type of research process typically came from eggs stored for fertility treatments that were no longer needed and scheduled to be discarded. Or if not, they had to be harvested by inducing the donor to over-ovulate. The use of stored eggs was in very limited supply, and harvesting eggs from donors was not commonly used because the process requiring course of hormonal treatments can cause various and sometimes permanent side effects. In an editorial in another scientific journal, Nature, a journalist reported that Hwang's team has allegedly harvested and used egg from their own female researcher. And it was unclear how they obtained other eggs. This brought research ethics into question.
Nationalism and medicine.
In June 2005, Hwang was named Korea's first #1 scientist. At the inauguration of the World Stem Cell Hub at Seoul National University Hospital, President Roh Moo-hyun said, "It is up to politicians to make sure that controversies over bioethics do not get in the way of great scientific achievement and progress like this." In November 2005, it was reported in the media that Hwang's team has used egg from female researchers and illegally bought eggs from one of the private hospitals famous for in vitro fertilization. Soon after, in December, allegations that the paper had also been fabricated spread through the internet. An investigation committee was formed at Seoul National University to verify these allegations. The report, released in January 2006, found that Hwang's team has procured 2,221 eggs from a total of 121 women during the course of their research. and that they have failed to create any somatic stem cells. In May 2006, prosecutors concluded that there were never any stem cells, and there are none now. And key researchers, including Hwang, were charged with fraud, embezzlement, and violation of bioethics laws. The Hwang's case has helped Korea advance its regulatory science on human subject medical research, including bioethics laws. Institutional arrangements, such as Institutional Review Board or IRB, have become commonplace. Biomedical researchers have come to appreciate the need for the institutional and ethical regulation and oversight for better research. One feature that emerged from the Hwang Woo-seok case is that as the state and the media became sanctuaries for Hwang, it was unnamed medical scientists, whistleblowers, and keen-eyed citizens within the civil society who demanded that these allegations be clarified and verified. A new emergence of citizen scientists who had not previously been well represented in debates surrounding medicine and science. Building on this institutional arrangement, Korea was able to establish itself as a global center for clinical trial in the 2020s. At the same time, the President's remarks show that even in the 21st century, there is still a strong sense in Korean society that science and medicine have a duty to contribute to national economic growth, and that the debate and consensus that should accompany can be ignored. The contrast and limitation of the state-led healthcare industry are still a challenge for Korean society and medicine.